So, you have a company, let's say it's year 2. Now, did you go right into hire a person to help? What was that kind of that going from the solo entrepreneur to at least 1 or 2 people? How was that transition
That
made?
was probably the scariest part because I had already made a couple of big mistakes. I'd leveraged my house. I had spent money I didn't have. I'd bought product that I couldn't sell. I'd made a lot,
made some.
Fortunately, I was still like doing it small, so it wasn't like $1 million. It was like, smaller. And I had taken some seed and investment dollars from friends and family. I had, so been through a little bit of that. But this is actually a good story because it was a couple years in. I really didn't have any employees. But I needed employees desperately. I had started as a wholesale business, but knew that I wanted to sell on the web. This web thing looked like it was gonna, stick around. But like I was saying about the money thing, we were growing fast, and with product, you have to go place your orders with the factory, and you have to land the product, and there's always this cash flow issue, right? Of paying for product before you've sold it, and or fulfilling orders before you've been paid. That gap, that's always like the crazy thing to manage, at least in my business, but I think a lot of businesses. And so I had placed orders with the factory, but frankly, I'd run out of money. And wasn't going to be able to pay for it. And so, but I knew I had a little bit of time, so I started to look for investors. And the business that I was doing, that I was telling you about, Waywards, was consulting with people on their websites, et cetera. So I met this couple. I'm not going to name them because they're probably like known in the community, but I met this couple that was starting a little VC, and he was ex-Microsoft, and she was his second wife, and I don't know. They hired me to write like all their copy for this VC, and I was kind of like, oh my God. This is it, right? Like, I need money. They hired me to write their web copy. Like, it's all coming together. So but then I was like, okay, whoa. First, I need to deliver like a product that they actually like. Like, I can't ask them for money before, like I do a good job. So I work away, get them their project. They end up loving it. They're nice people. And so then after we get done, I'm like, so, that mission statement we worked on where you were talking about how you want to work with local business people who are passionate about what they do, and Oiselle like checked all the boxes, right? It was like a dead-on fit, unlike some VCs which only invest in like early stage technology, et cetera, et cetera. So I pitch them. And they're like, wow, well, we had kind of heard you talking about Oiselle, but this sounds exciting. And so we start down the road of like, dating, right? Or, figuring out if we're going to be a match. And I don't know if you guys have been through this, but like, sometimes it can be a quick process, but more often than not, it's a long process. And both sides have to honor the process. Like, they want financial information. You want to get to know more about them. They're going to kind of set what kind of return they want. You're going to tell them what they, back and forth. Well, anyway, so this goes on forever. And I'm just like 6 weeks into it. I'm got my day job. I got my Oiselle passion job. I got the chasing the money job. I'm just like, I'm extremely exhausted. And so much so that I'm like, not going to chase any other money because I'm figuring like, this is it. Like, I knew that we were going to this was going to happen. So anyway, I go on I have my long run group, and this is like, right, your group that you process everything with your friends. And we had this new friend join my group, Sarah Lesko. She was actually going to come tonight. But, and at the same time, after the run, I was going to meet with the CFO, the woman from this new VC, right? And so I'm on the long run group, and I'm like, guys, I'm going to meet with the CFO, and she's going to tell me whether or not they're going to invest. I'm kind of nervous, and like, run group, and I was like, oh, cool, talking about it. And she's like, oh, well, you should let me know how it goes because, my husband and I, we do a little bit of angel investing. And I just met her like a couple weeks ago. I'm just like, okay, like, who says that? Like, I don't know. Like,
who says that? Only people do it say that.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, okay, she's just like being nice, trying to like calm my nerves a little bit. So, but I noted, right? Filed that away. So we get done with the run. I change my clothes. I meet up with the CFO, but I just had kind of a weird feeling in my stomach, like, and I sat down with her, and she just says, so, I bet you want to know if we're going to invest. And she says, we're not. And I just remember I'm sitting outside. It's like a Starbucks, of course. Like, what goes on at Starbucks? Don't you kind of look at Starbucks sometimes and just think, like, okay, there's dating, there's business interviews, there's like marital breakups. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I think I've done all three.
I totally have to interrupt here because it's totally funny what you said. So I literally 6 years ago bought the URL. What I heard at Starbucks. Because for that fact, you hear all kinds of weird stuff at Starbucks.
Yeah, it's all going down at Starbucks. Yeah. That and maybe being an Uber driver or something. I think between the two, you could really get some good stories. But anyway, so I remember in that moment, like I asked, I wanted to know why, of course. It's always good to find out why somebody says no to you so you can learn. And, she basically was like, I just don't think you guys have the infrastructure to go to the next stage, or we're worried about your infrastructure. And in my mind, of course, I'm like, I'm asking you for money to get infrastructure. Like, but and we talked a little bit, and then I did like this is embarrassing, but I love to admit it. I was like, when you like break up with somebody, or you have like some high tense like business meeting, right? And you just have this vision in your head of like this noble moment where you're like, well, I don't need your money, and you like and walk off. But instead, I just got so upset because I was in this crazy position and working hard and that didn't get the money. I started crying. And it was like, and then I was like pissed that I was crying. So I was like pissed and crying and like, it was like awful. Anyway, I just kind of like ended the meeting. I was like, no, totally, like, I get it. It has to be right for you, and it's, on and on. So, but anyway, I like to tell that story because the very next day, well, that night actually, I texted my friend Lesko, right? I'm like, I guess I should talk to you and your husband, because you guys do angel investing. And the next day, or 2 days later, her husband came and visited me at the office, and I just remember he sat down with me, and because I had been chasing investors, I had a term sheet and everything, and he kind of asked me a whole bunch of questions about where the business was going, what we were doing next year, kind of our market strategy, et cetera. And, I just told him, and and then he was just like, well, yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch. And then literally half hour later, I was looking for $150,000 at the time. And he wrote me an email half an hour later and said, we're in for 50 and I'm going to help you find the rest. 2 days.
2 days. Yeah.
6 weeks, 2 days. So it's just the insanity of like, I don't know. I just, chase more than one money.
Rule number one.
Rule
Don't
number
put all
one.
your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you have a company that's a bird. Yeah. And then rule number two is just that, crazy things happen, and the more connections you can make. And what I love about the story too is that I met her through running, which was my passion and my interest anyway. So I like to say that the running gods put us together. Mm-hmm. And they've continued to invest in Oiselle over the years. And yeah.